Hello friends, my name is Alomgir. I'm a host of Chatting Away, where I talk to millennials with Bangladeshi heritage. Today I'm chatting with an economist. His name is Faress Bhuiyan. He finished his undergrad and PhD from Northwestern University, and right now he is a professor at Carleton College. He was very kind to give me some time, and I'm very excited to chat with him. All right, let's go, let's hear him. All right, Faris, welcome to Chatting Away with Millennials of Bangladeshi Heritage. Thank you so much for giving me time and joining me in this chat. So I know that your semester is ending and you have a lot of things going on, and this busy time, you have made your time to come and give me this interview. I really appreciate it.
It's been fun, no worries.
All right, so let's get right into it. I want to talk about your work. You are a professor at Carleton, and you have been there for the last 12 years, and you have written many papers. And one of the subjects that kind of fascinated me was happiness, and I want to talk to you about that. So can you give us a little detail about what is going on and what you learned? What kind of got you into it, and what is that paper? Can you give me a little detail on that?
Sure. Well, I'm happy to be here, and hi to you and everybody else who's watching this. So yeah, I've been studying what we call subjective well-being as opposed to happiness. Happiness is a catch term that everybody understands, but the base core idea there is trying to get a feel for people's well-being, but at a subjective level. So objective measures could be things like, hey, what is your income? Do you have financial security? Do you have a job? Those are objectively measured. I can actually see how much money you make. So if I asked you like, hey, are you happy? And you're like, yeah, I'm very happy. Well, I cannot really go and get inside your head. Well, I guess maybe with progress of science we can, but at this point, we really cannot get inside your head and see whether you're lying or not. So in that sense, this is a measure of well-being, which is subjective. And so that's how we kind of tend to think about this. And the questions we are generally asking is, something about life satisfaction. Taking everything together these days, how satisfied are you with your life? Would you say you're very satisfied? We would put a score of 5 on that. You're not satisfied at all. That's a score of, say, 1, and so on and so forth. So that's how we that's what we mean by happiness in some sense. That's how we're measuring it. It's a form of subjective well-being. So the way I started thinking about this, I grew up in Bangladesh, and one thing that I saw in Bangladesh a lot is status, importance of status. If you upper middle income, whichever version you see, and you see a wedding, the amount of money that is spent is a bit too much compared to how much people are making. And so you very quickly recognize that people care about status a lot. I mean, if you go to Bangladesh and you see the number of people who have Apple phones, it's kind of mind-boggling. Like, okay, for a country given its economic situation, is it really that important that people have Apple phones? So status is something I've seen a lot, status comparisons and all that. And so that's where my interest was. That's originally where my interest was. So that's where my research kind of started. When I was doing my doctoral work, that's what I worked on. I wrote some theoretical models about it, that if everybody's kind of looking at each other and their own satisfaction with their life depends on how they're doing compared to someone else, is this worth it? Is this a good thing? So imagine you have an apple and you're trying to think about, well, should I be happy with one apple? Oftentimes what people will do is they will look around to see how many apples others have. And so if nobody has any apple at all, and you are the only one with the apple, that one shiny apple, you will be very satisfied. You'll be like, as far as the apples go, I'm very satisfied because I'm the only one with an apple. On the other hand, if you looked around and you saw that everybody has at least 3 apples and you have only one, all of a sudden you feel deprived. You feel like, well, if everybody has 3, why do I have 1? So that is the basis of kind of this idea of comparison, people comparing themselves with others.
Does it make them happier, or it makes them it makes them happier, you think?
Potentially or potentially not, but it definitely affects their decision. It affects their well-being or their subjective well-being. It affects people in different ways. But at a minimum, this is something people do. People do compare themselves. And that's where this idea of status, this is the idea of like, how am I doing compared to them? Look at our house compared to their house. Look at my job compared to their job. Look at my phone compared to their phone. So this is something that, animals do as well. Animals also compare. And the idea behind that is, from the evolutionary point of view, if you are doing better than somebody else, your chances of mating are higher, and your chances of passing your, passing your children and your line of genetics is higher for them. So this is something that, not sure where exactly it came from, but humans also have the same trait. Most humans do. And most humans, as you were asking, do feel better if they're doing comparatively better compared to others. So if you have one apple and nobody else has any apples, generally that apple will make you more satisfied or more happy. On the other hand, if you have less apple compared to everybody else, that generally will make you less happy. And this has been, this has shown up in lots and lots of studies, that people do compare themselves with others, and it does affect their decisions in life, and it does affect their happiness.
So my question is that, do you think that is the that is the right way to find happiness, or is there a better form you think as a society should have? Or is it just, you were saying that just being structured that way, that people are comparing themselves to become happy, but do you think that that's the best way of doing it, or there are alternative way of to find a true happiness?
So there are things that are human nature, and there are certain things that are in our control and certain things that are not in our control. Now, a lot of studies that have looked into life satisfaction or mental health or happiness have found that, there are all kinds of measures of this, but generally they find roughly 2/3 of your life satisfaction and whatnot cannot be changed. It's just ingrained in you. It's just nature. It's human nature. So a lot of what economists do, or what I do, for example, or a lot of social scientists do, we're not trying to say necessarily what a world with a better human nature would have been like. Instead, what we're doing is we're trying to explain what is. So we look around the world and we say, hey, why are people behaving the way they are? Oh, they were behaving the way they are because of so, so, and so. So from that perspective, we definitely see that majority of people, doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor or middle income, majority of people compare themselves with others. And majority of people are affected in their decision-making and how satisfied they are with their lives based on comparison. Would it be nice if they didn't do it? Sure. Is there a way to change that? Well, that's a different question. That's not my specialty, how to change human nature.
So, of course, then you talk about, I was looking into the slideshow where micros and minis of happiness. Sure. And if one wants to become happy, truly happy, beside comparing, you talk about like a few factors where spend time with your family, have a true relationship with your friends, talk about also be active in society. So can you give me a little bit of sense of what those are, and why those things make differences in someone's happiness?
Yeah, so I don't want to give the viewers the wrong idea, or you the wrong idea, that there's nothing we can do to be more satisfied with our life. There are things we can do, but one should always recognize there is some kind of a upper limit to how much you can, right? So a good portion is genetic, a good portion is evolutionary, and that there's not a whole lot we can do. So a lot of, say, mental health issues, for example, you may try, yoga and different types of lifestyle choices, but if you are clinically depressed, you are going to be clinically depressed up to a point, and you need some help. So there is a good portion that we can't do anything about. Now, there is a portion where you can do something about it. And then there are some choices, lifestyle choices that you can make. Now, let me tell you a few that will happen to most people. Age. So most people with age, when you've heard of the midlife crisis, that's a real thing. So if you look at the happiness literature, you're going to see somewhere around 40-ish or 35, all the way to 50, 55 is the most unhappiest part of somebody's life. So
I'm
that's where the
sorry,
midlife.
you said that 40 and 45 is the most
So 30, yeah. So somewhere around 45, like you, me, we are kind of getting there. Yeah, we're supposed. This is the time we're supposed to buy a sports car. A nice red sports car is what we're supposed to buy now.
Okay.
to compensate for the sadness. And the story there is basically, when you're young, things are getting better. You're getting stronger. You're learning more. And then you have all these dreams of who you want to be. You want to be Spider-Man and Superman and firefighter. At some point, you want to be nobody wants to be a professor, but I guess you want to be an investment banker, a doctor, a lawyer, a worker for the people, a politician. But then as you kind of go through college and all of that, reality starts to set in. And roughly around 42, 43, 44, somewhere there, you realize, yep, this is as far as I'm going to go. And that's also usually the peak of your career at some level. I mean, you still keep going up after that, but that's where you're most productive. So I think at that point, you become kind of bitter. A lot of people become bitter because they realize, oh, yeah, I'm not going to be Superman, or I'm not going to be Wonder Woman, right? And so then it takes a little bit of time for you to adjust to that. And right around, I would say like 50, 55, what the current theory is, you become wiser. And as you become wiser, you realize, why am I, thinking about those? It's not a big deal. Am I happy now? Is life, other circumstances okay? And, you kind of calm down and you get happier again.
You just come to in terms with your life, with yourself, right?
Exactly. So yeah, that's the thing with age. Now, in terms of things that you can do to make yourself happier, they've found that if you have a lot of money, it hits some kind of diminishing return at some point. So the first $1 million makes you very happy. The second mil makes you happy, but not as much as the first mil. And then the second and third. Okay. So from that perspective, they say if you use your money that you're getting to buy things, okay, so nice car, nice house, nice shirt, nice stuff, it's going to hit strong diminishing return pretty fast. On the other hand, if you use the funds or your money to get experiences, traveling, learning something new, that actually doesn't hit diminishing return at the same rate as spending money on things does. So if you are financially getting in a better place in your life, you may want to go more for the experiences as opposed to buying more jewelry and buying more things. Another thing that seems to help people feel much more satisfied with their life is volunteering and helping others. There's a lot of evidence for that spending money on yourself versus spending money on others tends to make a difference. Now, those studies you need to be a little bit careful about because there is some self-selection going on. So people who like to spend money on others, when they get the money, they spend on others and they feel fulfilled because that is something they wanted to do. But it is possible there are individuals who don't really have that empathy bone in them as strongly as some of the others do. So when they get the money, they don't spend the money on others. And we don't really know what would have happened if they would have spent. Right. It's like the counterfactual. We don't know the counterfactual. So one needs to be a little bit careful with those studies that says like, oh, volunteering will make you happy. For sure, for certain people, it will. And that has been, we have data showing that. But for those who don't volunteer, it's hard to tell what would have happened because they haven't, and we don't know. If we could see them in parallel universe, that's the perfect experiment, but we haven't been able to do that. Staying healthy is good for you, for sure. So if there are things you can do to stay physically well, it is very strongly connected to how happy you are going to be. Feelings of autonomy and freedom. So if you feel like your life is based on making somebody else happy, so in the Bangladeshi context, making your parents happy or making your spouse happy, just always trying to kind of please somebody else and not feeling that you have a lot of control over your own life, right? That can be pretty damning. So you probably want to get to a point in your life where you have more autonomy and freedom in what you want to do and make your own decisions. I'm not saying selfish decision. That's a completely different story. So it's kind of like, I always wanted to be an architect, but my family always wanted me to be a doctor. So I'm just going to become a physician. see, it's not that you're being selfish or anything. You're just trying to make your dad happy, or mom happy, or your guardian, or somebody happy. And while it may seem like you're doing a good thing, it's going to make you miserable at some point.
Yeah, you can. I get that. You cannot take the responsibility of someone's happiness. That's a huge burden to have, right? And
it's a huge burden to have. And also, you want to have a feel that you have control over your own decisions.
Right.
If you feel like you're not having control over your own decision, that's never a good thing. So that's why one of the things, if you look around the world, and a lot of development economists will talk about women's rights, right? And of course, women's right is something that most people in the US would agree on, like they should have rights. What it does for them in societies where they don't have the rights, even if they have a nice life. So imagine a queen or a princess, okay, in a fictional Middle Eastern country that's very rich, and they have food, and they have gold, and they have cars, and they have people working for them. Even those individuals, they know at the end of the day, oftentimes they don't have the freedom or the power or the autonomy of doing what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so no amount of gold and food and car and house is gonna make up for that lack of autonomy and freedom. So that's why giving people rights to do things and kind of getting rid of constraints, financial constraints for people who are poor, right? Low income people, they might feel burdened because of financial constraint. They cannot do things that they want to do.
Right.
That's a big one. So giving people the freedom or autonomy to do things is probably one of the most important things when it comes to life satisfaction.
Great. Thank you so much. You elaborating on the subject that you are very familiar with. And what is the data? Where did you usually find those data to be able to come to those kind of conclusion?
Life satisfaction or subjective well-being data was not really collected back in the days, right? So economics as a profession was very much about objective measures of well-being that I talked about: GDP per capita, income, unemployment, that kind of stuff. But somewhere around, I want to say 60s and 70s, there were some economists who were saying, you know what, maybe income is not capturing the full picture. It is an important thing, because when you have a high level of income in a household, you are free to do more things. You're able to do more things, right?
Right.
You can afford a better house, better healthcare, and you can travel and do all of that. So it is definitely, higher income is definitely connected to life satisfaction, but it is not everything. So that's where they started collecting data about happiness. And Easterlin is the guy who's known as the father of happiness economics. And he's the guy who collected data about happiness for a bunch of rich countries, so US and a few countries in OECD or Western Europe country. And he saw that over 2 decades after the Second World War, the GDP per capita, or income per person for these countries, pretty much doubled. But that happiness data that he was collecting, that did not change at all on the average. So that's where he kind of pointed out, like, how can we be fine with this idea that income is the end all, when income per person, after taking into account prices and everything, so don't worry about inflation, that's been taken care of. After that, it doubled, income per person doubled, but people are still saying their satisfaction with life has not changed at all. So that's what he called the Easterlin's paradox. And once he said that, happiness economics was kind of born. A lot of people started working on it, and that's when data started getting collected. So right now,
what was the year?
60s, 70s, 1960s or 70s. Yeah. So since then, data has been collected by a lot of different surveys. So economists collect all these kind of surveys at a household level, what we call micro surveys. You have your Gallup polls that collects data from all around the world. There's the World Value Survey, where you go survey, I think, about 3,000 to 4,000 households randomly from every single country. So they don't get to like all 200-ish countries, but maybe 140, 150 countries every other year. Right. And now they have paneled it. And now the amount of data that we have about happiness is staggering. So there's no like one source, there's at least 100 different sources.
Okay, so we're gonna come back to your work on a little bit on development a little later about Bangladesh, but right now I want to touch base on a little bit about your personal side. In early on, I saw your bio that you wanted to study physics and mathematics, and then you kind of came into economics. So tell me a little bit about what changed your mind and how you navigated that field.
Sure. So when I lived in Bangladesh between the age of 3 and 18. And when I was actually born in the US. So my dad was doing his graduate work and I was born here, but I don't remember any of that, right? So I was the anchor baby, if you will. My parents were not interested in that. And then they moved back to Bangladesh. So when I was 3, they moved back and they basically wanted me and my sister to grow up in Bangladesh, learn the culture and all that. So, so I grew up in Bangladesh. I did my O levels, L levels. I went to an English medium school, Maple Leaf International, or Dhanmondi International is what it was called. And so then I came here for my undergrads. So when I came to, I joined. So I went to Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois. And when I joined there, I was getting ready to get my physics on and all that. And I was taking my math courses, but they placed me out of some of the physics courses because I had A levels. And for those students who do A levels, it is pretty hardcore. You learn quite a bit. So they placed me out. So I was kind of looking for other courses. It's liberal arts education, right? And so my dad, I think, was the one who said, "Hey, you should take some econ courses. Just check it out." So I took econ course, and I got a B in my first econ course. I was not very happy about that. And then I took another econ course, and I got another B. So I was like, what is this thing? Like, why do I keep getting B's in it? And nonetheless, I started to view economics as a completely different discipline, because here it was very math heavy. And you saw it being applied. So the first year I wasn't doing a lot of physics. I was taking some econ courses, and then I took this one course with Jeffrey Eli, and in that course he exposed us to this theorem called Arrow's impossibility theorem. Now, Kenneth Arrow, he passed away, I think, 2 years back. I got to meet him in person, which was awesome.
Oh, nice.
Oh, he's one of the brightest guy ever. So Kenneth Arrow is probably one of the youngest economists to get the Nobel Prize, and a bunch of his students got the Nobel Prize. And he's like the Einstein in economics that a lot of people don't know of, which they should. And he wrote this little theorem when he was a graduate student, where he said, any voting system you see out there will have a flaw. And he kind of said there are at least 4 things we want out of a voting system for it to be fair. And every voting system that you can come up with will actually fail in at least one of those 4 criteria, meaning there is no such thing as a good voting system. This was amazing, because before that, for hundreds of years before that, social scientists, not economists, social scientists overall, so economists, political scientists, sociologists, anthropologists, they've been trying to come up with voting systems. And every time somebody would come up with a voting system, somebody else would say, well, this is all good, except there's this problem. And they kept doing this. And here's this young graduate student who writes this weird, abstract mathematical proof for a couple of pages and says, you guys are looking for something that doesn't exist. So it's called the Arrow's impossibility theorem. So I saw that and I was like, whoa, that is, wow. That is amazing. What? Where did that come from? And I remember at that point, I was like really, really drawn to economics. I mean, the fact that they are very math heavy and quant heavy was already something that appealed to me. So I was able to use my mathematics skills in there.
Was it the finding that kind of interested you, or it was
the finding and the method, the way he kind of proved it? I mean, he used math, obviously, right. But it was just like, wow, like that is, I never thought about how big of a deal that was. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, my dad is a big figure in my life. He is the perfect dad, I think, that one could have. And we are basically best friends. And so I talked to him like, okay, now I'm really caught between physics and economics. Math will always be there because I know it's a really good tool to have. What should I do? And he basically told me, you do what you want, but I do want you to recognize if you want to come back to Bangladesh ever, well, here I am stuck in the US, but he said, if you ever want to come back to Bangladesh, in terms of the labs and stuff like that, physics might be difficult to work with. And I always wanted to study physics because I wanted to work on renewable energy. I was young, you have these big dreams. And I was like, I want to work on renewable energy and come up with a clean source of energy and change the world. But the more I looked into it, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, anything is possible, but the chances are much lower that you are the one who helps break through and become, you'll be the Superman to do that.
Right.
On the other hand, economics seemed like something that was useful pretty much everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And especially my motivations were always to help people who are, poor, or people who are underserved or underprivileged.
Right.
While, cracking the code on energy would help everybody in the world, it's a much more difficult problem. But with economics, I could be working on research, I could be working with, NGOs, and I could be working directly with policymakers and governments to help out. So the more I looked into it and more I thought about, okay, what are the chances that I will be able to impact people's lives without being an amazing, smart person? Economics seemed like that thing. Like, okay, if you're amazingly smart, great, you'll do great work there too. But even if you're not amazingly smart, if you just understood the basics of economics and the basic idea behind the discipline, you could go into pretty much any position. And if you want to help, you can make some meaningful impact. So after that, I didn't look back. I think one day when I retire, I'll probably go back to graduate school or undergrad, maybe even, and go get a degree in physics again. Because I know physics has changed a lot. There's been some massive discoveries since. So in another 20, 30 years, the physics I left behind will be much different physics, I'm assuming. So that'll always be a little passion of mine. But for now, economics, I am an economist and I love it.
Right. Of course. I mean, when you talk about it, it shows that how passionate you are about the subject. And it's, of course, anything you want to learn, there's no ending to the learning, right? You could always learn whatever subject you want to take on. When you said the fact that, I maybe later on I could go back and get a degree on physics and go undergrad or graduate school. What do you think of education in today's world, where millennials or the next generation or the current generation, they're kind of dismissing the fact is the institutional education is no longer needed. What do you say to that?
Well, it's a difficult question. I think there are pros and cons on both sides. I don't think it's as clear cut in a question. So a lot of things in the world, so I'm going to give you a broader answer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things in the world are such that you find a system that you kind of use, but it's not necessarily the perfect system. But the problem is, do you have a better system to replace it? So that's why we kind of stick with them. So, I mean, democracy is a pretty good example. We talk about democratic regimes around the world and all that. And then, we see what's happening in the Congress in the US. We look at what's happening in the parliament in Bangladesh. I mean, while we like to say that, these are strong democracies, or, you look at India and you want to think of it as a strong democracy, but we also see how things get deadlocked, and sometimes public opinion is one thing. So in the US, for example, Roe versus Wade, you see public opinion is like overwhelmingly 70-75% is on one side, but then the Supreme Court is. So then the question becomes, well, is democracy, is the system that we have in the US with the Supreme Court and the Congress and the president, I mean, are these good systems? And the way to judge them is not to say this is perfect. Of course, you're going to be able to poke lots of holes and bring examples. But then my question would be, okay, so what is the replacement? And if you cannot come up with a better replacement, then this is the best we got. Right. So it's not the best, but it's the best we got. So I'm going to, I think people should think about the current education system in those ways. There are definitely certain things we can improve on. Quality of education. So if you think of whichever state you are in the US, think of the most expensive or the richest suburb, and now think of their public schools. Mm-hmm. And now also think of one of the poorest areas in the state and think of their public schools. Now, these are both public schools, but you can already see the resources they're going to have, the kind of quality of teachers they're going to have, the material they're going to work with is going to be vastly different. Why is that? So it's not necessarily a fault of the education system. The curricula could be great if the resources were there, if it was implemented properly, it would be great, except there is inequality in how it's being done. So At a rudimentary level, you could say, well, there's a problem of inequality in the country, and that's leading to some of these public schools failing. And on the other hand, some of these public schools generating amazing number of students and all that. So there's that. Another aspect is college education. Is a college education needed? And I think you'll hear a lot of people talk about like, oh, Steve Jobs, or here's some massively successful person dropped out of college. Well, I mean, you have to understand, for every 100,000 people who drops out of college, the success story is probably there for maybe 5%. The rest actually does not do as well. Dropping out of college for Kanye West might make a lot of sense, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense for Joe and Muhammad, because for them, they are not coming from a lot of money. They perhaps don't have that creative spark that's going to become viral around the world. For them, they're looking for a job, and that college degree definitely helps. And if you look at the average data, it's strongly evident that getting a college degree gets you much more financial security in terms of job, employment, the kind of job you get, the amount of pay you get, and all of that. There's literally no doubts. Now, is college education for everybody? No, absolutely not. If Messi was getting a college degree and stopped playing soccer, that'd be a shame and that'd be silly. But you cannot use the example of a few wildly successful celebrities to make a sweeping generalization about everybody. That Messi is not everybody. One has to recognize that. And there cannot be a million Messi at the same time. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, there are a few things still to kind of think of. Okay, college is generally good for the average student, yes. But at the same time, college bills are piling up, right? If you're trying to get a good education at a private institution, you're talking $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. And if you don't get some kind of help from the government or get some grants, you may be looking at a $250,000 degree, right? So 70,000 per year, 4-year degree, that's more than $250,000. So then the question is, instead of giving the $250,000 to the institution, what if you give it to the student and then they started their own business and all that? Okay, so that sounds good on the at the beginning, except you'll realize almost nobody pays $250,000. Okay, so they look at the financial needs of the family. Most of them are going to get a lot of government grants if they're US citizens, for example, and all that. So it ends up being much lower amount. And then most kids who are getting a job are making considerably more with a college degree than they would without the college degree. And so they're able to pay back the loan. There's some who cannot, for sure.
They also have to know how to utilize it. If they are not, taught how to utilize it, then they wouldn't be able to. So
now, but one should be careful in assuming people don't know what they're doing. And so economists, we'd like to think people know what they're doing for the most part. So of course, people gamble a little bit, like, okay, I think with a college degree, I'll be able to get a job. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Now, if you look at Europe, though, Europe by Europe, I mean, say Western Europe, so German, France, and some of these other countries, they put a lot of emphasis on technical schools. So they basically say, you don't need a 4-year college degree. You could get some kind of technical know-how for 2 years and then go work and get specialized in becoming an auto mechanic. You could get specialized in this or that, which kind of works out. But the thing is, I mean, I deal with college students all the time. 2 years is not enough time to figure out what you could have been good at.
I want to touch base on one of the things that the people who are watching or the next generation, if any of them want to pursue this career, become an economist, what advice would you give them?
So I would say definitely brush up on your economic skills. On your math skills. There's just no way around it. It's a tool. So if you said, like, I want to be a carpenter, but I don't want to use a hammer or nails, that's not going to work. So make sure you do your algebra, you do your calculus, and you get good with that. So that's one thing. Second thing, become a good writer. I think a lot of people don't realize this, but economists have to be good writers. Economists are always working with policy. They're working in the private sector. And we use lots of techniques but you cannot just be a technical person and get away with it. You'll have to communicate with policymakers. You have to communicate with others. And I think it is very, 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 very important to be a good communicator. And one of the most important way you communicate is obviously orally, but the other one is writing.
Right.
So I think being a good writer, being a good quantitatively advanced and mature is important. And also just, you have to be motivated. So, I mean, there are different levels of being an economist. You could get a degree in economics as an undergrad, and you could call yourself an economist. That's absolutely fine. I would say make sure that you kind of look at all the different things that are happening around the world, find something that you're passionate about, and then think of economics as, okay, how do we make the right decisions in that particular field, whether it be environment, whether it be education, whether it be inequality, whether it be happiness, whether it be how to make a poor country rich. Whatever it is, you should be passionate about some topic, should be good at math, should be a good communicator, and I think the rest will kind of fall into place.
That's great. Thank you. So now let's talk a little bit about your childhood. You said when you were 3-year-old, you went back to Bangladesh and you grew up mainly there before you moved back to go to college in US here. So what was it like in your younger years, and what struck out the most in the lesson that actually you kind of carried throughout your life?
It's a broad question. And we could probably talk about this for hours, and I would probably come up with new things I hadn't thought of.
My thinking would be is that Bangladesh itself kind of give you that struggle because it is one of the poorest country in the world. The resources are not as broad as this country has. So you probably, even though your parents are very well educated and probably were able to provide you whatever necessary, but you have seen a lot of struggle around you while you were growing up, and how that shaped you, and that I'd be interested in knowing if anything that struck out while you were growing up.
I mean, the circumstance that you grow up in definitely affects who you are as a person and what kind of career choices you make. So I come from a middle income family. My dad, who's the university prof, and my mom, who used to teach in a school that I went to, they were both honest.
What are the which university your dad was teaching? And
so my dad was a professor of geography and environment in Jahangirnagar University.
Okay.
In Shabar, right? And my mom, she worked for ICDDRB for a bit, and then I was causing trouble at school, and so she left her ICDDRB job, and then she joined Dhanmoon International or Maple Leaf.
Okay.
She was never my direct teacher. That would be a conflict of interest and all that. But and then she stayed there. She taught kindergarten for a very long time.
Okay.
But I think in terms of how it affected all of those experiences, one thing is, I'm a development economist. I mean, yeah, I do happiness research and I do relative consumption and that kind of stuff. I also study microfinance and all that. But I'm a development economist precisely because I saw so much poverty growing up around me. And even in Bangladesh at that point when I was growing up, you would consider our family middle income. And even we had so many struggles, right? So when we first moved back to Bangladesh, we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, all 4 of us, me, my sibling, my mom, my dad. And then, our situation improved over time. But still, I went to an English medium school and I was surrounded by a lot of kids who were considerably richer. It was difficult kind of seeing and kind of keeping up. But I will say the things that were most useful for me, or lessons that guided me through, is if you are interested in doing something and if you're passionate about something, you will get it done, as opposed to if you're not passionate about something and you're doing it for somebody else. So I remember growing up in Bangladesh, a lot of my friends were really catering to, or almost forced to study. You're going to go sit on your table and you're going to be studying for the next 3 hours. And your good mother will bring you a glass of milk and you'll drink that milk, even if you don't like milk, and you are going to study for the next 3 hours. And we'd have neighbors, kids like sitting by the window, kind of repeating the same thing, and just moving their head, almost like in a trance.
Right.
And you could tell, like, the very moment their mom walked out or their dad walked out, they wanted to do something else. And I mean, that's a little bit of kid as well. Kids tend to do things like that.
Right.
But I think whenever you force people to do something, I don't think it ends up pretty well. So for me, when I was, study-wise, I did well, but my parents never asked me to study. Never. Never, period. They never did. And for me, my incentives were, I want to go play cricket as soon as I can. I suck at it, but that's not the point. I enjoyed playing it. So one of the first things I did was, let's come home, quickly finish my homework so I can go play. Right? I got interested in, math and science and that kind of stuff because my dad and I would watch, shows on TV or read about something. And then I'd be like, yeah, how do you become a scientist? Well, you need to be good at quants. You need to be good at this. Okay, so I need to be good at this. Yeah, so I studied those things on my own, or I would. So that really was helpful for me all through my younger years, middle school, high school, even through college, because nobody needed to push me to study or do my things. And I didn't have any kind of regulated time that I studied. Okay, every day you have to study 3 hours, 4 hours. No, most of the time I'm studying very little, because during classes, I'm trying to pay a lot of attention to what the teacher is saying, because I want to learn things as fast as possible so I can do the other things that I like. And I also know that I want to learn these things. So when the teacher is speaking and kind of listening, asking questions, trying to understand it right there and there so that I don't have to do it later. And so I didn't really have any tutors. Most of my friends had lots of tutors and all that. So I think that internal motivation and allowing people to kind of go along the lines of their internal motivation is very important. And my dad would always tell me one thing, that it doesn't matter whether you major in history or economics or physics or sociology or religion or English, it doesn't matter. Just be good at what you do. If you're good at what you do, that's it. You'll be fine. Now, of course, if you're not good at what you do, then certain majors are more employable than other majors, for sure. I mean, I can say economics, computer science, these are majors where you're much more employable. But if you do well, and if you're passionate about what you're doing, it works. I would say, yes, ideally you want to follow your passion, but I think it's not pragmatic for a lot of people. It's easy to say that and to write a self-help book and saying, just follow your dreams and everything will be fine. No, it will not be fine for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, following your dream is not easy. It's easy to say it, but it's very difficult to actually do it in life for the people you care, because we do care about people around us. So if you are not able to follow the passion that you have as your primary job or work, follow it as a secondary or as a hobby, and don't give up on it. Just keep it on the side, and maybe a time in your life will come where you can really start polishing that.
So I want to move to our final conversation, which is about development of our country, Bangladesh. And you are doing something about it. You got involved. You have your own charity where I would like to talk about that. To start, what do you think Bangladesh is in a trajectory of becoming a what do you call one of the developed country, not developed like in a developing country in the world, where their GDP growth is very 7-8% per year right now, what chances do they have, do you think, is becoming like a next Singapore? And what do they need to work on to have that kind of growth in future?
So, I mean, it's a difficult question. It's hard to I mean, for our economy to grow at the rate of what China or India has been experiencing, that happens. But sustaining it for multiple decades in a row is a very different question. Now, Bangladesh has been having, I think, around 6.5% or more over the last decade and a half, I want to say. So somewhere
On average?
right after 2000 on the average, which is pretty darn good. But you also have to kind of remember where Bangladesh is starting from. So I think currently Bangladesh's income per person after controlling for prices is roughly, I want to say, around 4,000-ish USD. So per person per year, Bangladesh is making about 4,000 US dollars after comparing for prices. Now imagine living in the US on $4,000 for a year.
Right.
That's what I mean by taking care of prices.
Right.
So Bangladesh has ways to go. If you're wondering what is the income per person in the US, it's more around $50,000 to $60,000.
Right.
So now I want you to think of 4 and 60.
That's
So
a
we're
lot, like
talking,
full-time.
we're not talking about
15
percentage
times.
differences. We are talking about differences in factor.
Right.
We're talking a factor of 15.
Right.
That's big.
Yeah.
So even at 6.5% or 7% growth rate, you take about what? About 10 years to double your GDP per
Right.
capita. But doubling 4 makes it only 8. 50 and 60 is very far away. So I would say we will need sustained growth for sure. There's just no way around it. Otherwise, we just don't catch up. But on the good side, I would say political stability is very important. And law and institutions that uphold law is also very important. So I think a lot of us are aware of stories in the past when we were growing up where somebody's property would be taken by somebody else. Like,
Right.
oh, I had the papers, but apparently this was sold to 2 different people, or this is a very powerful family in the area, whether it's political, whether it's something else. They took over my land, I cannot do that. Or there's a lot of decentralized corruption in Bangladesh, right? So if you know the right people, you'll get the loan. If you don't know the right people, you will not get the loan. If you pay bribes, you'll get things done. So these things need to be cleaned up. Now, in a weird kind of way, I think there is some stability in the country over the last 10 years under the current government. Whether we like it or not, that's a completely different story. But there seems to be some kind of stability, which is kind of good. But we also want the right kind of stability. So the right kind of stability says no political turmoil, which we have achieved, kind of. But also, on the other hand, we also don't want, we want a democratic stability, not a, authoritarian type or one party rule kind of thing. I mean, it's never a good thing when you don't have new leaders coming up, everybody having a shot at it. I mean, democracy's idea is everybody should have a shot to get to the top and stuff like that. So I think those are things we need to work on. The legal system needs to get strong. Implementation of law needs to be strong. And corruption has to go away. Now, I don't know how those things happen in Bangladesh. It's hard to tell. How do you fix a problem that is decentralized? When corruption is centralized, as in there's a few government officials that are, corrupt, well, their time passes, they get older, they go away, and then they sometimes take the corruption with them. Other times, law enforcement can go after them, like, oh, we found these 5 people who are messing up the government, get rid of them. So that's centralized corruption. So there, it can get fixed pretty fast. Decentralized corruption is something completely different.
Right.
I want a small loan to get a house. Oh, how much are you going to give me on the side? Otherwise, your papers are going to sit on my table for the next 5 months. I mean, these kind of inefficiencies.
What's the solution for that? Do you think it's education and principle?
I don't know. It's a difficult, I don't like saying giving answers when I don't know. I don't have a solution. I don't know. Over time, as people do better and there's less pressure on people to be corrupt, because oftentimes we look at corruption and we say, oh, bad, or this cop did this, took money, oh, bad cop. It's easy to say that, but in the context of Bangladesh, I mean, traffic police, for example, a lot of people pick on them. Look at their job, look at their compensation.
Right.
They are responsible for their mom's health, for their children's education, their wife's health, their health. What do you think? I mean, the amount they're making is enough? So part of that corruption is also economic. The amount of economic burden you're putting on a person, and you're talking about the lives of the people they love about, them becoming corrupt is actually very rational and reasonable, and I can completely see why they would do that. So as the economy grows and gets richer, and the compensation for all of these law enforcement agents gets higher, maybe it naturally goes away. The decentralized.
I also think so, because incentive also matters, right? Because if you have a right incentive, then people will tend to have less inclined to do any kind of corruption, right?
Right. So I mean, that's one of the hopes. The other thing I'll say about Bangladesh is there is no silver magic bullet. So people need to stop doing that. Like, oh, what if we develop a port? Will we become Singapore tomorrow? What if microfinance take over? Will we become Singapore tomorrow? And no, it's not going to be any of those. It's going to be slow growth, slow as in 5-6% over time. Right. If the institutions are good, so by that I mean political institutions, property rights, law enforcement, if these things can start functioning properly, that allows the economy some breathing room and then place to thrive. If on the other hand, the political stability, the institutional stability, property rights, and the law enforcement is problematic, there's too much corruption there, that will stifle growth. So allow growth to happen over time, it will work out. There's not going to be one silver bullet. And even if there is a silver bullet, oftentimes people don't know what that silver bullet is going to be.
Do Bangladesh have a right incentive to keep their great minds in?
Well, that's true for every part of the world. What you're talking about is brain drain, and brain drain is always going to happen. So as your country develops and it gets better, brain drain will get reversed or stop. But you cannot force people to stay. So the way it works is people from the country goes out to the richer countries, right? Why do they go there? Because they have better facilities, their training is better, their colleges are better, their universities are better. But on the other hand, if you said, no, you cannot go there, well, then you're stuck in the country and you're not getting that education. And I am never a big fan of not letting people choose what they do.
Right.
So holding people back and saying, no, you have to come work for Dhaka University and Jahangir. Well, they only have that many positions and their labs can only do that much. So I think, there could be some strong policy there. I'm not sure if that's the right way to do this. Let the economy grow. If the economy grows, you'll have better labs, you'll have better facilities, and over time, the brain drain will naturally reverse. Trying to stop it by some force is probably not a good idea. And by force, I mean some legal instruments is probably not a good idea.
My final question is that about your charity. Yes. Give me some insight on that. And because I did sit a couple of times on your advisor board, and it kind of it is fascinating what you're doing. And I think it started right after pandemic, and you have helped so many people, and you have been feeding the poor in Bangladesh. So what motivated you, and what is the project, and where are you taking it?
So we started Nourish Bangladesh, which is a NGO, a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 registered, and it's based off Minnesota, Northfield. So we started this right after COVID. In June, I lead a off-campus study program from Carleton College. Take a bunch of students, about 14 students, to Bangladesh to learn about development. And they always want to go and do things there and affect change. And I tell them, you cannot just go to a country and start affecting changes, and they understand that. So we're there for 2 weeks. Let's just be a fly on the wall and learn and just absorb the things in. And then this time, some of the students were asking me like, oh, so are we not going to do anything about Bangladesh this time also? And I said, I'm not stopping us from doing anything. So yeah, we can definitely do something and help out, because Corona and COVID, this happens once in 100 years. And we were very worried it was going to hit Bangladesh pretty hard. And along the same time, you had the cyclone Amphan happening in 2020. And then you also had flooding, massive floodings happening, which people don't realize it was one of the worst floodings in Bangladesh in decades. So it was really a trying time. So we put all of those together and we said, okay, let's do something. Let's help them out. And so it was a bunch of my students from Carleton who's been to Bangladesh, and myself and a few other friends of mine. And we basically said, what are we good at? We're not in the field. We're not in Bangladesh. So we cannot really start helping out in Bangladesh in person. But we are here in the US, and let us provide some kind of service to Bangladesh from here. So our expertise was we're academics, and we can read things, we can learn about things, and we are generally honest, and we are all in this to volunteer. So we decided very early was going to be food-based and dry food at that. And that's why we kind of looked at those NGOs and those volunteer groups that were going to be doing dry food distribution. And we vetted them. We made sure that they were going to use our money properly. They were going to take pictures, information about who these individuals are. And so then Nourish Bangladesh was born. So as of now, we've done dry food distribution in, I want to say 30 or 40 districts, different districts. We've given out, the amount of food we've given out is more than 1 million meals already. It's been like a year and a half that we've been in operation. We are working with roughly 14 NGOs and volunteer groups. We tend to avoid the really big NGOs. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're using this mid-size NGOs, big and small, one's based in Bangladesh, one's based in US, and vetting them, first making sure they'll use our money properly and that they need the resource. As in, if we didn't give the money, some people would actually not get the food, and that's what we're doing. We're also doing Qurbani and Zakat, because a lot of people kind of said, why don't you use your network now to help us with these things? And we've been doing that as well. Our clients are all over the place. We help, transgender community, poor people, people affected by flood, Rohingya refugees, children, women-led households, sex workers. During COVID, all the brothels closed, and so they were in big trouble. Their earning completely dried up. Day laborers, so rickshaw pullers and what have you. So we help all kinds of people. Also remember there were some attacks on the Hindu community in Pirganj at some point. So we were one of the first NGOs to kind of go there with food and help them out. Right. So basically, wherever there's an emergency need for food, we try to show up there. We also help with COVID, with oxygen cylinders and all that. So we also do little side projects on the side when need arises. We also did a blanket distribution, but our big one is still dry food distribution. We don't like to see people starving.
That is great. It's a very noble cause, and I'm very happy that you found your niche. And I also came to you and asked you a question, which you answered about, why not do something sustainable where people could use it and then be more independent. But then I realized it makes sense that everybody cannot do everything. You have to find your own thing and go for it. And you are doing great work, and I want to thank you on behalf of Bangladesh. The fact is that also you are growing. That says a lot that you are doing something good. People also believe in your in the service that you are doing. One of the questions I have is that you are choosing this, you are betting these NGOs. Can people kind of directly go to them and give money?
They could possibly, but then it's not us kind of telling you what's happening with the money, and you cannot necessarily be sure whether it's being used in the right project. So most NGOs will have certain projects that they do, and then you give money to those projects. But we are kind of doing more like, okay, there's a problem here. Can you go work there? Mm-hmm. So that's the difference. But could somebody completely bypass us and do that? Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. Our main goal is to help the ones who need it. But as I said, some of these projects are not actually up there on their website either, because we are kind of directing them.
Right. So you have that power of kind of, because of the money that you are collecting, and you kind of give them.
And then the other part that I may forget, some people, usually bigger donors, they care about tax deduction in the US, right? So if you were to give money to some NGO, say Jago or Manusha Jonne Foundation in Bangladesh, which are fantastic ones, so the Manusha Jonne Foundation, for example, you wouldn't get tax deduction in the US because they are not American NGO. But if they give it through us, well, you get tax deduction because Nourish Bangladesh. So there are little things like this here and there.
That is huge, yeah.
Yeah, and for us, you can always ask us, where did my money go? And I can literally, we have it all online. You can see exactly what was bought, what was the cost, every single piece of detail is there.
So as for moving forward in the future, where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself having your own volunteers run in Bangladesh, or this is like this would be your core thing where you'll be betting NGOs and giving money?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I don't really want to say anything, forecast too much, because I didn't think Nourish Bangladesh would be around, and now we are registered and all that. Seems like we're here for the long haul. But I will say that I'm not a big fan of replicating the same thing over and over again if it's already there. So as I said earlier, there are a lot of good NGOs in Bangladesh, and they're already working. They're already networked. I mean, you look at an NGO like BRAC. If we were to do a sustainable project at some point, BRAC would be somebody we'd be interested in or talking with. Or Bidyananda, it works in pretty much all the districts. So why replicate the same thing twice and then pay new people if they are already, Bidyananda is already paying all these people, they're getting a paycheck. And if we gave them food, they're going to go distribute it. They already have the list. So while it sounds awesome, like, hey, we could have our own little NGO, like in person in Bangladesh, I don't think we will be doing a version where we, with our own hands, do that. I mean, it would be satisfying, but I don't think it's needed.
So you just want to empower them.
Yeah. What could happen, though, we could have a group in Bangladesh. We already have a few people in Bangladesh working for us who would be more in terms of making sure that the money is used properly. So checking up in person.
Okay.
But in terms of networking and distributing, I don't think we need to redo what's already there. I think we try to use the resources that has already been developed to their fullest.
Okay.
So when we give money to Bidyananda and they're like, oh, you gave us the money, we're going to do distribution. That means they actually have extra resource that is not getting used.
Okay.
So, you know, Faress and Alomgir were hired by Bidyananda, but they don't have enough money. So we are sitting, not doing a whole lot, a few days in a week.
Right.
When extra money comes, we are already paid, so we go do the work. So why not use all the unused resources instead of, you know, copying the same thing and wasting more? So
you were saying that, you know, these structure already there, and why not empower them to do great work, and we collect the resource and we provide it to them.
Right. But also make sure that they're using it properly, because that is always a worry that
I think it's a win-win situation, and when there are win-win situation, you're very likely to succeed, and you're doing a great job. Yeah, that's awesome.
We'll see. Fingers crossed.
All right, so I want to thank you so much for coming and giving these thoughts that you know, you are one of my friend, our mutual friend, who you know for 22 years. He said you are a great mind, and I think you are a great mind for this generation. So keep up the good work. I want to ask you, like, I will give you 5 words, and you just tell me what comes in your mind. Let's do that. When it comes to let's say friendship.
Not too many needed.
Not too many. Okay.
I think all you need is that one good friend, that 1-2 really good friend that you can trust with your life. That's good enough. You don't need too many friends. One should not cater to making too many friends.
Okay. Politics.
Stay away from it. No. I think politics, I guess there's 2 ways of thinking about it. 5-word is always difficult, right? Let's see. Do your best. Do your best and be an activist. If you walk into politics, you should, if you're young, get involved. But if you don't succeed, don't give up. Like, don't get too sad. Just walk in knowing that, oh, maybe nothing will happen, but it's an important piece. It was an important thing that I need to do. And then have lowered expectation, but please do work on it.
And family.
Spend time with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, spend time with them and treat them equally. Even your kids, talk to them like adults. You don't have to protect your family or anything. You just be a member of the family, a loving member of the family that is there. You don't have to be the protected or the protector. Be an equal in the family.
And the life itself?
Life, learn. Learn, live, and take it easy.
And happiness, final thought.
Happiness. Sometimes underrated, sometimes overrated.
True. And during your career, any book that you would like to recommend to your audience?
Nah, I cannot say one book. That wouldn't be fair. There's too many books out there. If anybody's interested in development, it's an older book, the elusive quest for growth. Growth is elusive in some sense. The elusive quest for growth by William Easterly is a good book to remind everybody there is no silver bullet. Everybody is looking for, could we do this, and would that make Bangladesh very developed? And there's no silver bullet. It kind of makes that case pretty strongly. I think that's an interesting book to read.
You probably said it earlier. Who is your most favorite economist?
Oh, Kenneth Arrow. It's
Canada, right?
I wouldn't ask you to read his stuff. It's very mathy and boring, but boy, that guy is amazing.
All right, thank you so much for giving this time. It's very precious. I enjoyed. You are hard to get in touch with, but you are very generous. You're very generous. You're very generous when I am able to get in touch with you, and I thank you for that.
All right, it's been a pleasure, Alomgir. Keep doing what you're doing, and I hope to see some of the other videos. I'm looking forward to those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Take care, Alomgir. Bye.